A very good evening, everyone. A very good evening, everyone. Myself, Dr. Venkatesh Karthikeyan, Community and Family Medicine postgraduate from AIMS Patna. I'm thankful to everyone who have joined this webinar. In the past 2 months, IMA JDN has organized webinar series on various topics about career prospects in hospital administration, financial planning for doctors, about COVID vaccines, mucormycosis, and COVID management in collaboration with Ministry of Health and Family Welfare and AIMS Delhi. And we are doing a series of webinars. Both IMA JDN and the parent IMA is doing a lot of informative webinars for the welfare of junior doctors. We got very good from the junior doctors that this is helping them into their day-to-day practice. But what about this teen PG aspirants, INITT aspirants who are going to appear for exams? So they are more concerned about MCQs. They are more concerned about exam point of view. So in order to enlighten them about the recent updates in ophthalmology, especially in the context of COVID, IMA JDN has organized this webinar under the guidance of Dr. Abul Hasan sir. Sir is a senior pediatric surgeon from Erode and is serving people of his locality by running a completely free COVID hospital. So recently, till now, sir has spent more than 1.5 crores in running this completely free COVID hospital, which includes free drugs like remdesivir also. So his role in the COVID cure as well as in the vaccination drive is enormous, and he also served and his team has served so many people in free teleconsultation service, thousands of people, including IMA JDN Tamil Nadu, IMA JDN Delhi. All these JDN units have done extensive services in the teleconsultation also. So without any further ado, I would like to request Abul Hasan sir to welcome our honorable speaker, Dr. Neha Agarwal ma'am, and the junior doctors who have joined today. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Venkatesh. Good evening, all. I'm very happy to participate in this JDN webinar series. This time it is, most of the webinars, I think I'll focus on exam going students. This time we are going to have a seminar on COVID and INCT exams. So it's a wonderful, project, a scheme or project by IMA JDN. I welcome our faculty, Dr. Neha, and all my JDN colleagues, Venkatesh, National Convener, Dr. Shiv Joshi, and all the participants of the seminar. And I wish them have a very nice webinar and a very 100% benefit from this webinar series. I welcome everyone once again. Thank you, Venkatesh.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I take the privilege to introduce our honorable speaker, Dr. Neha Agarwal ma'am. Ma'am has completed MS Ophthalmology from the prestigious Institute of Ophthalmology of Jawaharlal Nehru Medical College, Aligarh Muslim University. Ma'am is a gold medalist in her subject in both undergraduation and post-graduation. She has a vast experience of her subject with immense passion for teaching. Apart from unique teaching skills, innovative approach towards solving ophthalmology MCQs, clinical impressions and animated videos, a level of patience towards teaching students, answering their queries in such a patient way is unmatchable. She's a very good orator also, and student love for her motivation words. I have always seen ma'am posting motivation quotes in a Facebook wall and in a Telegram group which has more than 30,000 students. So even I don't know how ma'am can be so consistent in motivating students as well as educating them on an everyday basis. Thank you so much, ma'am. And ma'am has, without any second thought, ma'am has agreed to do this webinar for our JDN members. So now I request ma'am to take over the session. Before that, if any of the audience has any queries, any doubts, they can leave it in the inbox. Ma'am will answer it in the end. Are we good to proceed, ma'am?
Yeah, Venkatesh, we can.
Welcome, ma'am.
Hello, doctors, and thank you for the kind words. I hope that this session will convey what we are there for today, and definitely will help in the upcoming INICET also, especially with respect to the COVID. Yeah. So shall I share my screen?
Sure, ma'am.
Is my screen visible, Venkatesh?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible, ma'am.
All right. So, doctors, as you know that COVID is an important topic. We are all in the pandemic era. And I would like to highlight first some of the safety concerns also that we should know as a medico being in the pandemic era, either you are ophthalmologist or not, there are certain safety concerns regarding the eye safety, which all of us should know. Plus, with respect to your upcoming examination also, there is a pattern that they are asking more of your practical aspects too. So now gone are the days when they're asking you the MCQs only on the theory. So let's get started. Now, as you know that basically we are seeing that corona is going through the mouth or it's going to the nose, but apart from this, eye is again an important organ through which we can have the transmission, and that is why the eye safety again is important with respect to the spread of the COVID-19. So how it can spread, all those patients who are having mild to the severe degree of COVID-19, they have symptoms like fever, cough, or they are having breathlessness. These people can have the eye secretions, and these eye secretions are actually infective. So what to do? You have to limit the eye exposure in those cases. So how to limit that eye exposure? Whenever a sick person is there and he's coughing or he's talking, you have to take into consideration that you are at an appropriate distance from that person, because not only these can be gone through the mouth or the nose, they can also enter your eyes. All right. So second important thing is touching your own tears also. Suppose the person is having the COVID-19, his tears may be secreted. So unknowingly, when we are rubbing our eyes, we are, wiping our tears. These tears can also be prone to the infection. And if you are touching the tears with the tissue paper and you are not disposing them, then that can act as a fomite for the spread of infection. So I think in day-to-day practice also, one should be very, very careful regarding these aspects. Another important thing is that if you are putting those tissues or the handkerchiefs over the tables, or you are just touching them, then you are touching the doorknobs, and then you are touching the eyes, you have to be very, very careful. And that is why it is said that we should not actually use our fingers to touch the things, to push the buttons in the left, or to open the doors. Rather use any other thing. We can use the key or the elbow part, so that your fingers are intact whenever you are touching your faces or eyes. So that is a very, very important concept. Now, coming to the eye itself, what it can cause a pink eye. That is the layman language, but actually it's a conjunctivitis. So yes, like all the viruses, coronavirus can also cause conjunctivitis, but certainly it's nothing to panic, because we have seen that in our society, more than the protection, we are panic about everything. So you have to actually counsel your patients. We have to educate them that there's nothing to panicky. Plus the rate of infection in the conjunctivitis, it's not pretty too much, it's just 1 to 3%. But yes, you have to be careful. If the person is having that infection, do not touch the eyes and do not exchange the fomites that is there. And the washing of the cloths, especially the hand towels, the face towels, should be separate. Now, once the person has this, how to help yourself and the others also, you have to see that you have to take certain common precautions, and those common precautions are coming from common sense. You don't have to take certain extra things, but if you are following those common sense precautions, definitely the chain will get broken down and you are not spreading the infection to the others. So what does the common sense says? You have to wash your hands a lot of times. You have to apply the contact lens hygiene. Now this is again an important concern, especially I'll say the girls, when we are using the contact lenses, the hygiene is very, very important. Avoid touching of the face, avoid rubbing of your eyes off and on. And if you are doing it, please keep the separate tissues. Do not use the common ones once you are using the other things also. Now, when you are visiting the ophthalmologist, whenever you are visiting the ophthalmologist, we know that we cannot maintain that 2 meters distance. Even 1 meter distance is not, possible when once we are examining with the torchlight or the slit lamp. Direct ophthalmoscopy, you have to do it very, very closely. So don't get nervous, because all the ophthalmologists are doing their part very, very hygienically. We are maintaining proper hygiene, we are taking all the precautions, we are also using those shields over the slit lamps. So do not get panicky. Yes, I would say do not visit the doctors until it's very, very urgent, but if you are visiting, don't panic, you are in the safe hands. Yes. So there are certain things that you might expect new when you are visiting ophthalmologist, and sometimes people get afraid. Oh, what's this happening? So you should not afraid, because sometimes in order to take extra precaution of your health, we might ask you to wait outside. We might ask you to wait inside your car only. Don't sit in the waiting area, because sitting in that waiting area will increase unnecessarily crowding, and that will again increase the chances of the infection. So take it easy, not a problem. Don't sit for a very long time. Don't go before the prior appointed time. Go within that time only, so that you have to wait for the minimal possible minutes before your turn comes. Yeah. And yes, we are also postponing the non-emergency surgeries and the procedures, because definitely I don't want to do any invasive procedure in the COVID times until unless it's very, very urgent. So don't expose yourself too much. Now, having seen the important safety concerns and how actually the spreading of infection is taking place, I am more worried about that is called as the mucormycosis, and that is the talk of the town. Recently, even the FMG paper has also asked. I would be very happy to tell you that the same question that I gave them in the last minute practice, the same question came next day on the orbital mucormycosis, and that is definitely a thing that is raising the brows of all the people, because the mortality rates are very, very high. So I would like to tell you something about the orbital mucormycosis. Right. Now, starting from the basic mucormycosis, see, it's a fungal infection, nothing new. Everybody of us has been studying this. And this is a fungus which is omnipresent. It's present everywhere. But the thing is that why it was not occurring before, and presently when COVID-19 has been predominant, we are listening mucormycosis from every place. The reason is that now the immunity is getting disturbed. Now, earlier also that was present, but a normal immune system is sufficient to protect us from that mucormycosis. So those people who are actually immunocompromised, that is the main word. Any person who is actually immunocompromised can be suffering from this mucormycosis, and this is an infection that is mainly going in the sinuses and the lungs. Now, once it's going into the sinuses, the paranasal sinuses are opening, they are going and approaching towards the orbital apex, and there how the role of the eye comes. So what is happening? See, this fungus is very, very invasive. And if I say properly, it's a angio-invasive. So this is again important for your MCQ purpose also. What kind of fungus it is? It is a angio-invasive fungus. It is invading the mucosa of the paranasal sinus. And then it is getting the entry into the orbital apex. Now, once it is going to the orbital apex, let me remind you about the anatomy of the apex of the orbit. We have got all the muscles there, you know, the common tendinous ring called as the annulus of Zinn that is present at the apex of the orbit, from which almost all the extraocular muscles are coming. We have got the optic canal, that's why optic nerve is also there. We also have the superior orbital fissure. Now, once I'm saying that superior orbital fissure is there, you can understand that there is a hub of nerves. We have third nerve, fourth nerve, fifth nerve, and we have optic nerve. So all these nerves are at stake. Now, the problem is that this mucormycosis is not giving me any specific symptoms so that I can say, yes, this is mucormycosis and start giving the treatment. The person is having any, presentation which is similar to any proptosis. So it could be a case of orbital cellulitis. That could be going into the cavernous sinus thrombosis. It could be a case of orbital apex syndrome. It could also be a case of superior orbital fissure syndrome. Now, that's a dilemma for the students also. So, students, if you are getting a question of proptosis or the presentation is similar to orbital cellulitis, cavernous sinus thrombosis kind of a thing, and they are giving you in a patient who is immunocompromised, or rather if they are saying that it is COVID-19, please keep this orbital mucormycosis in a mind. This is actually a diagnosis where high index of suspicion is required. You are not having any specific symptoms, especially because the mortality rates are very, very high. Now, once you have that high index of suspicion, you can go for the orbital imaging. We have CTs, we have MRIs there. You can see, we can have the opacification of the right paranasal sinus. We also have the non-enhancement here. I hope it's visible. So sinus mucosa, there is a non-enhancement also. Now, if coming to the epidemiology, so what are the people that you can find in your clinical case scenarios or as a patient where you are having more of this COVID-19? So this could be a person who is having diabetes. Now, everybody knows that the COVID-19 is more dangerous in those people who are having the comorbidities. And under this comorbidities, first comes the diabetes. Especially if I'm talking about a severe diabetes, diabetic ketoacidosis, or a person is immunocompromised due to any other thing. It could be neutropenia, it could be transplant recipients, or we have the what you call as the iron overload. Iron overload, hemochromatosis is again a very, very important risk factor. Or we can have malignancies, especially the blood malignancies. Person may be on the steroids, immunosuppressants. So all these people, so expect that if they are going to ask a question on orbital mucormycosis, you are going to have COVID-19 patient, you are going to have a diabetic patient or a blood malignancy patient, maybe a patient is on steroids, immunosuppressants, means you are going to get some picture like that. Coming to the pathogenesis. Now, yes, as I told you before also, that the key word here is your angioinvasion. So it's getting the entry. Now, as I told you previously also, that it's going through the nose or it's going through the mouth. Now, once it is going through the nose, it is invading the mucosa there. It can reach up to the orbital apex. Once it is reaching the orbital apex, it can even go to the brain. And once it reaches the brain, the prognosis is very, very poor. It can cause a cerebral abscess also, because once it is, invading the blood vessels, it is producing ischemia. And that is why we have got that typical feature here that is called as the Ischar formation, the blackish scar you have. You will have the tissue infarction, necrosis. So all those words that you are getting related to the angioinvasion, you are going to get that in the question. So these are again important, along with the bony destruction. Now, which sinus? So most common sinus is your ethmoid sinus, and especially when it is invading this ethmoid sinus, it can go through the cribriform plate of ethmoid. From there, it can go to the brain, and once it reaches the brain, abscess formation is very common there. From the apex itself, we have all the nerves involvement. So I can have ophthalmoplegias, I can have proptosis, I can have chemosis. And what was chemosis? Chemosis is edema of the conjunctiva. So don't confuse it with congestion. So everything, keep that thing in mind, that it could be orbital cellulitis, which is presenting in a immunocompromised patient. That is the easiest way to remember, and it has shown you angioinvasion. That means it is a case of orbital mucormycosis. So let us see the presentation. I told you that the symptoms are very non-specific. You are going to get very typical symptoms like nasal congestion, post-nasal drip, a dark blood-tinged rhinorrhea. That is, I will say, slightly suggestive, more suggestive. Sinus tenderness, headache, fever, malaise, these are the common things. But yes, in the later stages, once it starts with your angioinvasion, it's going to cause a tissue infarction, it's going to the bony destruction, and you are going to get that typical, ischial formation in the infected area. I think then it is very characteristic. You can get even a direct MCQ that ischial formation is a characteristic of. So that could be found in the nasal turbinates, even in the hard palate. If it is found there, then it's very characteristic of the maxillary sinus involvement. All right. Now, coming to the diagnosis, see, here main problem is of diagnosis. Once a diagnosis is clear, you are doing the CT and MRI, you are there with the imaging, then you can easily confirm with the help of biopsy. Because signs and symptoms are non-specific, radiological findings are suggestive, but again, not very specific. I would say that direct histological examination is very much required. Again, a MCQ, if they ask you how to confirm, so I would say that biopsy is the key of confirmation. You can take it from any involved tissue, maybe from the paranasal sinuses, and this involvement is a patchy one, so you may have to repeat, you may have to take multiple times. Then you can use the different stains. Even the names of the stains are important here. You can use them. We will have the GMS stain, we have silver nitrate, we have PAS stain, calcofluor, all these are there, and you are going to get a very characteristic pattern. And what is that? We are having the non-septate or aseptate along with the right angle branching hyphae. So this is again a very important question, which can be your highlight. And this will be causing the angioinvasion. This is causing the tissue infarction as well as the ischial formation. So this is the typical report of the biopsies. You may have to repeat, as I told you. And even, positive finding is always not very definite, because in the laboratory, we have contamination. And this is a very common fungus that is coming as a contamination. So again, that point also has to be taken into consideration. Now, once you are clear with the diagnosis, treatment is very clear cut. Even we have guidelines from the AIIMS Rishikesh also, and so many times, COVID-19 treatment guidelines have been changed, but till now in the rhino-orbital as well as cerebral mucormycosis, we have that treatment. You can go with the lipid-based amphotericin B. This is going to be the I would say the drug of choice, the first line of therapy. Of course, in those people we do not have this or we cannot give this, you can go for the posaconazole. So this is your second one. And not only amphotericin B, lipid formulations are definitely better. So if you have plain amphotericin B also and you have lipid based also, go for the lipid based. And if you have some problem maybe of nephrotoxicity, that is a major limiting bar, then we can go with the alternate, that is your posaconazole. Along with this, sometimes, medical treatment is not enough. So yes, we can go for the surgical treatment. And in the surgical treatment, we can do the surgical debridement. Surgical debridement. Now, a very important thing is, how do you know that what is the extent of your debridement? So it's very interesting. You start debriding the tissue, and whenever you start seeing that the bleeding has started, then that is a marker, that is the endpoint that you should stop, because that means this area is not having the necrosis, this area is not having the tissue infection. So wherever you start feeling that the bleeding has started, that will become your endpoint. Again, an important question, most of the times they ask that how will you get to know that you have to stop the debridement there. Prognosis is really bad, and we have 70, 80, 90, so that goes different in the different data. But yes, a high percentage of people are having the high mortality and morbidity. So I would say keeping high index of suspicion is very, very important, and you have to be a little offensive here. And over treatment is always better than the under treatment. Early diagnosis is the key to success. Otherwise, because it's very, very invasive, I would say that the prognosis is not very good, and people are dying, maybe not due to COVID-19, but just due to the involvement of the mucormycosis. So I hope you had an insight about the eye safety concerns and also the orbital mucormycosis. Venkatesh, you can.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, like you were mentioning about the surgical management and the debridement of necrosed tissue. Does CT or MRI or any other radiological investigations has a role in deciding what extent we are going to manage, ma'am?
No, that is actually a very, very important thing here. CT and MRI is not deciding actually that what should be the extent. That is just showing us that it is involving. Even it is not confirmatory here. The findings that you are getting are non-specific. You are getting the involvement of the mucosa, you are getting the opacification. But whether this opacification is exactly due to mucormycosis, you do not know. So you have to confirm it with the biopsy only. I think this is one of the few diseases where radio imaging is not definite. Otherwise, every time, you have to do surgery, you do the radio imaging and you are clear. But the here radio imaging is not the most confirmatory one. You have to go for the biopsy, and plus the Ishar formation, that is very, very confirmatory. So you start actually debriding that black Ishar, and wherever you feel now the fresh tissue has come and now it's bleeding, that will be your endpoint, not the imaging.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, like I would like to ask, as an INICT aspirant who has just 4 days left for the exam, what are the
Yes.
things I should concentrate in ophthalmology? What are the key topics which I should revise in the last 4 weeks?
All right. Looking at the previous year paper, because we do not have many INI CT paper as such. Yes, it is a mixture of AIMS pattern and the PGI pattern questions. But if you concentrate on the previous year paper, they were asking more on the systemic association. So I would say that for every topic, you should go for the systemic associations. Like if I would say systemic associations of the cataract, systemic associations of the lens as a whole, like we have ectopia lentis, we have Marfan's there, homocystinuria, they are very less commonly asking the direct topics. So whatever things you are reading as an integrated part, like for example, if you are talking about the dystrophica myotonica, we have hashed faces, we have got baldness, we have heart blocks, arrhythmias, and then they are asking you the cataract. So that is very, very important there. Especially uveitis is again very important, because it's autoimmune, it is having the allergic etiology. So the chances of involvement of various systems is very, very high in cases of uveitis. And from last 3 years, we are seeing that these people have a tendency tendency of asking the questions on glaucoma, especially the open angle glaucoma. And that is why please read that open angle glaucoma, especially the ocular hypertension as well as your normal tension glaucoma, that part also, how we have the risk factors which are proning this ocular hypertension people to develop the frank glaucoma. Anti-glaucoma drugs are very, very important, and fundus images, they are always talk of the town. And I think diabetic retinopathy is mostly ours. So I would not be incorrect if I say that if it is not ours, then we see that why it is not ours mostly, especially the FFA, angiographies, the diagnostic procedures, they are quite important. Then I would say the neuroophtha. AIMS people had been asking neuroophthalmology always, and nowadays their concentration is more towards the abnormal pupillary reactions. So you should know them very well, and the test of the squint, because every time they are asking you either a Maddox rod test or they are asking you the Parkes 3-step test, and I think these are the things which we usually have some confusion and some dilemma. So please look at them very, very conveniently, and it's volatile also. So I would say that please revise them a day before also. Otherwise, what happens? We are, stuck up in one or the other muscle, and even after reaching the right muscle, maybe the side is confused. So all the tests of the ophthalmology should always be taken care of.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. Ma'am, few questions from the audience side, ma'am. Dr. Sanjay has asked, will COVID-19 have any serious ill effects on cataract patients? Can this virus worsen the condition?
Not directly. Cataract is a thing which is occurring due to the aging, and the COVID-19 is affecting the secretions. So I don't think so that it's reaching up to the lens, especially when it's avascular. So as such, I would say no. COVID-19 patients will not have any extra burden on the cataract patients.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, another attendee has asked, what criteria decides between medical and surgical management? When should one opt for debridement over medical therapy?
Yeah, I would say that we will always start with the medical management itself. And the first line of the drug is your lipid formulations, amphotericin B. But if you feel like that the condition is worsening and the amount of tissue infarction is increasing, even after giving that, then you have to take a decision. So it could be a individual surgeon's decision also. Some people are, defensive. They like to hold the surgical things, and they want to continue for a longer time with the medical management. On the other hand, some people are more offensive and they switch over to surgical debridement. Plus, look at the comorbidity. If the patient is having already diabetes or having some heart disease, we have more chances of ischemia and necrosis. I would say go for the surgical debridement early.
Okay, ma'am. And another question from Dr. Priyanka. For surgical debridement, what should be done if all the sinuses are involved?
That thing is very, very unlikely, Priyanka, although, but even if I go with that, surgical debridement you have to do if all the areas are involved, only those areas we are debriding which are actually affected, not the normal tissue. But if all the ones are involved, I would say that you have to be a little conservative, because we will have to save some nasal mucosa also. So definitely in that case, we will be collaborating it with the ENT surgeon, and we'll take his advice, and we will have to leave the sinus mucosa as per his guidelines then.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, like one question from my side. What is the scope of ophthalmology? If suppose an MBBS student is interested in reading ophthalmology and he finds it very fascinating, when should he think as pursuing it as a career? What really decides whether I should take ophthalmology or not?
Yes. See, if you like ophthalmology, if you have a passion, I think that is a good reason to pursue the ophthalmology. But you should have lot of patience, because it's not ophthalmology only. All the surgical branches, they have a little, longer learning curve. So if you are a person who wants to set up really fast and don't want to wait much, don't want to carry on with the fellowships, just like some people are there, they want to do just one PG and they should start practicing, then they should not go towards there, because ophthalmology is not only surgery, it's a microsurgery. So learning curve is very, very high. Plus it's technologically dependent branch. So every 4 to 5 years, by the time you are joining and you are coming out, a whole lot of technology changes, whole of the procedure of the cataract surgery changes. So you should be very innovative. Your acceptance towards the new technology, learning the new things, having the patience, because the patients that are going to come to you are also mostly geriatric population or the childhood population, which are not the cooperative ones. So but yes, it's good, because you can actually coordinate with any of the branches. So when you go towards the matrimonial side, I think it's a very good branch, because you don't have any fuss or any tussle with anybody. And it's a branch where you have coordination. So if your spouse is medicine person, you are good at coordination. He may be orthopedic person, then he's having a good one. I think medicos are also considering this as one of the aspects while choosing the branches. And there's nothing wrong in it, because the two medicos, when they are deciding to remain together, I think this aspect is very, very important. Otherwise, either you're compromising on the personal front or you're compromising on your career front. So in that way, it's a cool branch, and most of the ophthalmologists don't have any problem with the branches. Like, we are open and we are very much self-dependent. Like, we are doing our ultrasounds our own. Most of the time we are giving the anesthesias all own. Otherwise, surgeons are waiting for the anesthetist, and maybe surgery is 15 minutes and anesthesia people are coming after 1 hour. So we are self-dependent. So if you have to be one in all, and you have time also to enjoy, you don't have to be 24/7 on work, then that is a very good branch for you.
Great, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am, for the wonderful session. The way you explain things like patiently, beautifully, with a smiling face reflects your vast experience and the standard as an international faculty. I'm pretty sure that our junior doctors and medical students who attended this session, as well as the thing which we are going to upload the same on YouTube also. I think many will be getting benefited by this, and it will add a great value to those who are appearing, especially for the INI-CET and the NEET PG exam. Thanks a lot, ma'am, for your time and your efforts despite your busy schedule. Now, I request our IMA JDN National Convener and my mentor, Dr. Shiv Joshi, sir, to thank ma'am and the gathering.
Thank you, Venkatesh. I believe eye is one of the most important special senses we have as human beings. And when we hear that there are going to be ophthalmologic complications in any disease, there is a sense of panic in the general population, as it adds to the morbidity that the patients are facing due to the disease itself. I thank Dr. Neha Agarwal, ma'am, for giving a high presentation on various aspects pertaining to eye and COVID, and moreover for clarifying the doubts of our attendees today. I thank Dr. Abul Hassan, sir, who, despite being on the move, made time to attend today's session. And I appreciate Dr. Venkatesh Karthikeyan, who has effectively organized a series of ongoing webinars, keeping the usefulness to junior doctors in mind. I thank Clarinet for facilitating our logistics for today's session, and I extend my hearty gratitudes to all the attendees. IMA JDN is one of the largest association of the junior doctors, and we will be bringing many such sessions in future for all of us. Thank you for joining today.
Thank you so much, sir. I once again thank Dr. Neha Agarwal, ma'am, Dr. Abul, sir, Parul, ma'am, Shiv, sir, and Dr. Karan, and all the wonderful participants who made this webinar a successful one. Hope the knowledge gained out of this webinar will be useful in patient care as well as in your examination. Hope to see you all in the next webinar. We are closing now. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you all on behalf of Team Clarinet. Thank you.
Thank you.